Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 1st of June, 2012. I'm Jim Nintzel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll look at the latest in the race between Jesse Kelly and Ron Barber in the special election to complete Gabby Gifford's term, and look ahead at the most interesting matchups now that the fall campaign season is officially underway. Joining me this evening is Democratic Party Chairman Jeff Rogers and Republican strategist Sam Stone. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the CD8 race, this campaign between Republican Jesse Kelly and Democrat Ron Barber. We've learned this week we've had more than $3 million spent in this race. I think at the end of the day, Sam, we can say that the Democrats have done a job of establishing a message that Jesse Kelly is too extreme for the district, and Republicans have done a job of saying that Ron Barber is going to be a rubber stamp for the Obama administration.
I think both campaigns have done a very good job of branding their message, and this is going to be an incredibly close race. We're seeing massive early ballot returns. And, the question I have is, did Ron Barber get out there in time with his message? Because early on, his message was very unfocused, kind of all over the place. And so I think that may have an impact on this race. Jesse Kelly came in very focused, knew what he wanted to say, and got it out there.
And Jeff, we've got all this money being spent by these national people coming in from out of town, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the National Republican Congressional Committee. Why is this district such a prize for both these sides?
Well, I think that both sides want to leave this race and say, we told you so, and that the voters are on our side, and that this is a bellwether of what's going to happen in November. So I think that's part of the focus. Part of it is that this is a very closely, the Republicans have a 35 to 40,000 voter edge in this district, but it's still a very moderate down the center district. And so if the Republicans think that they can claim this district, I think they believe it'll give them a leg up in November in this district as well as maybe elsewhere. But I like where we stand right now. We've got something that we don't see very often. 55% of the Democrats have returned their ballots, 55% of Republicans have returned their ballots, and 46% of the independents. So I like those numbers really well. We typically underperform from the Republicans quite a bit by several percentage points. So that shows a lot of enthusiasm on the Democrat side. And I think even though we're down by 4,000 in the total votes cast between Republicans and Democrats, I like where we're at because we're going to have a lot of Republican crossover vote and certainly enough to make up that gap. And then once again, like many elections, it's going to fall in the hands of the independents of this district, which we think are moderate enough to steer away from Jesse Kelly because not only has he tried to, we've defined him as being so extreme, but he's also made so many stumbles that he looks incompetent. And I think competence is at least as important as where you are on the political scale of being liberal or conservative or extreme, such as him.
If you want to talk about stumbles, Ron Barber not even being able to say I'm supporting Obama, he's shown he's a very weak campaigner. And I think that's going to hurt him and give Jesse Kelly an edge. The other thing is this race is really important nationally because this may swing the presidential race a little bit. At least they're planning. If Jesse Kelly holds this district, it's going to be very hard for President Obama and his team to look at Arizona, having had their successor to Gabrielle Giffords lose in the Democrat stronghold of southern Arizona. It's going to be very hard to justify Obama putting the money into Arizona to try to put this state in play.
Well, I wouldn't call that district a Democratic stronghold. It goes to a moderate Republican or a moderate Democrat, always has and always will, configured as it is now.
And I think one of the things we're seeing here is a classic political question, which is if you get somebody who's very far to one side or the other, they tend to lose support in the middle. And the crossover vote, which you were talking about, is, I think, an important element of this. And we actually had Kate Kensky, who is a political scientist in the communications department here at the university, come into Arizona Illustrated earlier this week, and she spoke with Christopher Conover, and this is what she had to say about that crossover vote.
Why this is important is because although we know that 90% of Democrats tend to vote for the Democrat, 90% of Republicans tend to vote for the Republican, in 2010, one of the reasons why Jesse Kelly lost was because he lost among Republican women. There's a lot of diversity inside the Republican Party. Not all Republicans are the same, and Republican women are one of the groups that Jesse Kelly did not do as well with. So by targeting not just abortion, but being opposed to all forms of an abortion is a claim that can resonate with women. And again, doesn't necessarily mean that Republican women would then vote for Barber, but they might decide not to go to the polls.
Okay, Sam, so crossover is key to the Democrats' strategy in this race and has been for all of Gabrielle Giffords' campaigns as well. Your thoughts on whether or not Brian Barber can continue getting that crossover vote?
You know, I don't think so in this case. I think Gabrielle Giffords had a much stronger pull as a woman. And on top of which, this campaign cycle is very different from 2010. The issues that people care about now, 1, 2, and 3 is jobs, economy, debt. Jesse Kelly's talking about those in a way that's going to appeal to women, and he's made a lot of efforts to go out and reach out to women because he knows he had a problem with that last time, and he knows that probably cost him the election. So, his campaign, once again, learning from the past, and the fact that they were all in place, they've been able to put those lessons into play very well. And on the other side, we've seen Ron Barber looking a little muddled. I think in the end, he actually was hurt by not having a primary because he looks like an inexperienced, uncertain candidate.
I think people find him very comforting. He knows the issues. He understands the facts that underlie these issues. And people are tired of politicians who get out there and mouth bumper sticker slogans and get their talking points out and won't answer a question. And he does answer the questions when asked of him. He stumbled a little bit on the President Obama thing, but that was just because he's not an experienced politician. He's a sincere gentleman who is a public servant who people feel very comfortable with. And I think that's something that's going to help him a great deal. And I have to agree with Ms. Kinski. Jesse Kelly is he's still got those same issues. I mean, there are not very many Republicans who would say, I am totally against abortion under any and every circumstance. And I mean, even your most conservative Republicans talk about incest, rape, saving the life of the woman or the health of the woman. So, this is something that he's still extreme on these issues. And we see him very extreme on gay marriage, and he has a constitutional amendment to ban it. Now that's the most extreme form of sort of gay bashing that anyone would engage in, and Jesse Kelly's still doing that. So I don't think he learned anything. The only thing he learned from 2 years ago was to run and hide from the press and not answer their questions. And he still is engaging in all of these. These crazy beliefs. Like right now, he's putting what looks like crime scene tape on his signs that says "Lower gas prices through American energy." Well, every American knows that we cannot lower gas prices with just American energy. There's just not there. And so the fact that he continues to mouth these things that are so patently false I think are offensive, not just to women, but to all voters of every stripe.
And Sam, we should say in the efforts of disclosure here is you have worked in the past for Martha McSally, who
Correct.
is a potential candidate in the next round of the elections here and was one of Jesse Kelly's rivals. And one of the things she said during the campaign was actually echoing some of what Jeff was saying there about some of Jesse's unrealistic expectations of how much oil the United States has.
It's certainly an area where we disagreed with him and his campaign on, and Martha's approach is a more global approach to this that also takes into account the global markets. So that's something that obviously, we did disagree on.
Let me ask you this. There was another story in the Arizona Republic this week that was following up on a story I actually did during Jesse Kelly's campaigns 2 years ago that just talked about the number of federal dollars that were flowing to his family's construction company and often stimulus projects or earmarked projects, $60 million since 2010. And do you think that's a fair shot at Jesse, given the way that he approaches saying that government never creates a job?
Well, I think some of his rhetoric makes that revelation tough. But as we saw, voters here were exposed to that in 2010 and didn't care at all. You wrote an extensive piece on it. Others followed up with pieces on it. So I don't see that going anywhere. And the very legitimate argument, and Jesse's 100% right with this, is that job was going to somebody. Somebody's going to do that work. And if you look at the stimulus package, Had the bulk of the stimulus package gone into infrastructure projects like that, probably would have been a really good idea. The problem was a lot of it went to basically cover Barack Obama for 2 years until the midterm elections in 2010 by propping up state and local governments. About 80% of the stimulus cash from Stimulus 2 was used for that. So what they did was just delay some of the pain and heartache that we've been experiencing still in the last few years and not be very effective, whereas an infrastructure development program it would never produce the shovel-ready jobs that Obama wanted.
Well, first, it just shows character matters in this election, and integrity matters, and it just shows what a rank hypocrite this man is. I mean, to go out and say we must end all of these stimulus projects right now, and then to find out later from your article, 90% of their funding of that business of his father's comes from government spending, and to find out, as you said, tens of millions, 60 million since 2010 in stimulus funds. I mean, come on. Who do you believe?
Sewer line projects are not generally private industry
Right.
projects.
Which is my next point, is that sewer lines, highways, government infrastructure are some of the greatest things we could be spending this money on. And the reason this stimulus package was not as good as it could have been was because Republicans fought and fought and fought, and we got half of what the president asked for, less than half of what the president asked for in a stimulus package. And as we all know, those of us who have any kind of economics background or even undergraduate economics classes, when you're in a deep recession, almost a depression, stimulus funding is the only thing that's going to get you out of it. There's no time for austerity.
You have a Keynesian economic
background.
background.
Keynesian economics has served us quite well for about a century, and those who understand it are the people who are able to run a government successfully. Those people who try to ignore it, we see what happens, like is happening now in Great Britain. They're pushing austerity there, and austerity is not something that works in Europe or here or anywhere else in an economic decline. Austerity is something you do when things are going well. You cut back.
All right, let Sam get the last word in here because I want to move on.
They're pushing austerity because of 30 years of Keynesian economics put them down the rabbit hole, and now they have to dig their way out, and it's painful. We don't want to go there.
All right. Again, we'll I'm sure have many more conversations on this topic over the course of this upcoming campaign season, which is now underway. We had the official filings last week, and this CD8 race, this is the last race in what is now known as CD8. We're going to have a CD2, Congressional District 2. Which is a lot of the same area, but it goes from a 6 to 7 point Republican advantage to about an even 34% each with Democrats and Republicans, and you lose Oro Valley, Marana, Saddlebrook, some real Republican strongholds in that district. And Sam, going forward here, you've got a case where Jesse Kelly's registered to run there, but so is your candidate, Martha McSally. She says she'll step aside if indeed Jesse Kelly wins on June 2nd.
She'll step aside if he wins, and for him, this race is important not only to win, but also to show a bit of a margin of victory because, as you pointed out, the district is going to swing to the left a fair amount for this November election. And if he doesn't show that he can win by 5-6%, I think that's going to give the Democrats more incentive to come back, spend a lot more money in November, and see if they can take that seat. So he's got his work cut out for him there. And in the areas you mentioned that they're losing, Oro Valley, Saddlebrook, Marana, that's his home base.
And so this is really round one. All the talk we've been giving and the attention we've been paying to this is for a 6-month term, and the campaign really begins the day after the election.
It absolutely does. And certainly whoever wins is going to have a little bit of a leg up because they, after all, will be called congressmen for a few more months before the next round in late August. But I think if Kelly loses this, he's done. I just think, if you can't lose in the atmosphere we had in 2010 and you can't win here, then you're done. And
Ron Barber, you expect will stay in either way?
Yeah, because I expect that Ron Barber will win this for various reasons. But if I should be wrong, I think it's going to be very close. And you can look at that very close margin and say, look, the district improves so significantly that we would definitely prevail over there. But I think,
but Barber does have a primary opponent conceivably there, Matt Hines,
he does.
State representative, who says he's running whether Ron Barber wins or loses.
Yes, and Matt has been very good in the State House. He's very sharp. He's an emergency room doctor at UMC. So we certainly shouldn't count Matt out of that. Should that play out? Now I fully expect that if Barber succeeds here, that Hines has a pretty uphill battle and probably would withdraw, I would imagine.
Yeah, but if Ron Barber loses, Matt Hines may be an actual challenge for him. Matt's raised, last I saw, about $100,000, and he had probably more name ID going into this than Ron Barber did. So Matt is also more experienced on the campaign trail. So, I think you could see a very interesting primary develop at that point if Jesse Kelly succeeds in this election. Ron Barber may have a tough time getting back up there for November.
Let me ask you about what you see as, other than the CD2 race, what do you see as the most interesting race coming up this fall?
Oh, no question. It's Frank Antinori trying to hold on to his state Senate seat because the redistricting commission looks like they went directly after Frank and made this a very big challenge for him. So
he'll be running in a central Tucson district, a competitive one, but it has a 3 to 4 point Democratic voter registration edge.
Yeah, I mean,
against Dave Bradley, who was a former state lawmaker.
And Dave Bradley is well respected and well known. Comes in with some good momentum, and I know a lot of people lined up behind him. So Frank's got his work cut out for him, and that's going to be, some of the dialogue from the CD8 primary. Where Frank was saying, hey, I'm the guy that can reach out and get independence. He's going to have to go out there and prove it if he wants to hold on to that seat.
Your thoughts on that one, Tom?
I think stick a fork in and Frank's done. We're going to crush him. He made it his agenda at the state legislature was to screw Tucson and Pima County at every turn. He's used words like effing hippies about the people who live inside Tucson. He's, I think he's just toast. He's done. And it's going to be a pleasure to just thump him. I mean, a guy who can only raise $37,000 for a congressional campaign ought to realize that he's done and ought to figure he needs to move on with his life. And if he's going to be a politician, he's going to have to do it somewhere else because his reputation as just a bomb thrower and an angry man is not going to serve him well in central Tucson.
Let me ask you the same question I asked Sam. What do you see as the most interesting race here in the upcoming campaign season?
I think it's going to be CD8 again,
but aside from that,
the new CD2. For me, I'm kind of looking at CD9 up there in the Phoenix metro area. That one is going to be a real interesting race as to what happens because it's very close between Democrats and Republicans. So that'll be pretty fascinating. And I'm also very interested in the legislative district 9. Unlike District 10. And 9 is part of what was 26 and part of what was 28. So a little bit of central Tucson up to the north side a little bit. And in that one...
the Catalina foothills area.
Yeah, in the foothills area. In that one, the Republicans wisely ran only one candidate. And so that single-shot theory can be helpful. I mean, that's how we got...
In a house race.
In a house race. And so we got... that's how we got Nancy Young Wright in LD 26 in a better year than 2010 was. And I think that was probably a good strategy for them to do that in that area. So we're going to have to work hard to hold both of those seats. And I think we can do it, but we can't let our guard down in that area.
All right, let me ask you, Sam, about Congressman Grijalva. He's running for re-election. He had a scare certainly last time out. You think he has something
to help with that? Yeah.
Yes, you worked on his opponent's campaign. Yeah. You have a sense that Congressman Grijalva is equally vulnerable this year?
No, not even close. You had a very good confluence of circumstances, and I think we have a very good candidate in Gabby Mercer, who's Hispanic and fantastic, presents herself very well. The problem is that's such a huge Democratic advantage in that district, and you don't have the boycott. That's gone. It's been too long. You don't have the enormous Tea Party momentum from 2010. There's passion still out there in the Republican base, but nothing like the wave we saw 2 years ago. Those were the factors. Combine that with a very good candidate, an interesting, new story in Ruth McClung, made Grijalva vulnerable. And I really think we could have gotten him out of there had we recognized in time that she was within range. But no, I think it's going to be an incredibly uphill battle. And whether in the primary or the general election, I think is safe.
And you've got two primary challengers in this race, Jeff, and one of the things they've complained about is they feel the Arizona Democratic Party is not playing fair in sharing access to what they call the voter lists. Can you talk a little bit about what
Sure.
these lists are and what the rules are?
Our voter file is, we call it the VAN, the Voter Action Network, and the voter file consists of all of the information that is public record at the county recorder's office that we download, but we put it into a special system, and within that system we categorize voters. For instance, we have a 0 to 100 rating of every voter, Democrat, Republican, or Independent, and the people who are over 50 are over on that score are more likely to vote Democratic, and we did that from a lot of data mining, from a lot of research, and then a huge poll to verify that the data was valid. And so it's very valuable information for every candidate, and most candidates want to purchase that. In Amanda Aguirre's case, she didn't want to pony up the money to get that, and so then in Manny Erickson, I think, is the other candidate who expressed some displeasure that they didn't want to give him the access to the database. Well, for virtually all of his life, he's been a Republican. So we sort of saw some ulterior motives there, and we're not going to put out a welcome mat when we have a 10-year incumbent who is so well recognized within Congress and is such an important player in the environmental issues and on labor issues. I mean, as far as I see it, Raul Grijalva is one of the most important congressmen in America, and we have him here in southern Arizona. So we're not going to lay out the welcome mat for somebody to try to knock him off.
Well, you didn't not just lay out the welcome mat, you knocked the legs out from under a couple of them. I mean, Amanda Aguirre, from what I read and from what I heard, it wasn't a matter of her not ponying up the money. It was her being told she's not Democrat enough. And Amanda Aguirre served in the state legislature. She's been a Democrat her whole life. How do you justify that when Richard Carmona, no one's saying he's not Democrat enough, and he's been a Democrat for how many weeks?
Yeah, well, the difference there is that Amanda Aguirre voted against many Democratic interests when she was in the House. She was the only Democrat to vote against labor, to put a ballot measure on that eventually passed in Arizona, but labor's very angry at her, and she has no friends in the Democratic labor movement, I can tell you that, and few friends in the Democratic Party right now. So,
that's clear.
This wasn't a decision I made, but I stand by the decision made by the state party. We have a strong incumbent, and we have some duty to protect strong incumbents.
All right, very quickly, just about a minute to discuss Pima County Board of Supervisors before we move on to another topic. But the Pima County Board of Supervisors, they do have challenges here. The very crowded race up in the Catalina foothills where Ann Day is stepping down, a four-way primary there. How do you see that one playing out, Sam?
That's a really, really interesting primary because you have four totally different candidates. Vic Williams, the sitting state legislator, has a good amount of name ID. Allie Miller, the co-founder of the Tucson Tea Party Patriots, a strong activist, is really focused on the ground game. Mike Helen, who's more great guy, wonderful guy, very nice, but also hasn't been out there as much lately, so maybe people don't know, but he's got a lot of funding behind him. And then Stuart McDaniel, who worked as a fundraiser and I think assistant campaign manager with Jesse Kelly in 2010. So voters have had a lot of chance to meet Stuart out there on the trail. I got to tell you, I have no idea how this one's going to turn out. I'm really curious to see how it plays.
And the winner of that will take on Nancy Young Wright, former state lawmaker.
And I like Nancy Young Wright's chances. I mean, she won the legislature and won school board multiple times in part of that same general area. And she's the kind of principled, hardworking moderate that can win in that area. I'd say their strongest candidate that would worry me the most would probably be Helen, because he's a principled conservative, but he's not, a wild-eyed extremist and Tea Party person. And Vic Williams, he's all over the map. God knows where Vic's coming from, because he's everybody to everyone. So I would worry about only Helen. He would be the strongest candidate if I were a Republican.
Well, we'll have much to talk about on those races soon, but I did want to get to the troubles that City Councilman Paul Cunningham is going through this week. He was in San Diego on a trio trip, apparently got very intoxicated, said some things in a bar that have now come back to haunt him regarding some women who work at the city of Tucson. And you've got another Democrat, Karen Ulick, saying that perhaps he should resign. He can't continue on with the job. Jeff, how do you read this?
Well, I talked to Karen today, and she was very pleased to hear that Paul Paul has admitted that he has an alcohol problem and is in treatment and is pursuing it aggressively. And so, if there's a silver lining here, it is that he's admitted this and that he's going to face this problem. But I'm optimistic that the city attorney will do a thorough investigation and find out what the actual facts are. None of the people who were actually there and witnessed it have gone on record yet, and so we've got second, third, fourth person hearsay. That's all I've heard. I haven't talked to anybody who was there and actually heard what he said. So it's incumbent upon the city to investigate that because sexual harassment is a really big problem in our society, and it's doesn't always get taken care of because women don't always file complaints because they're afraid of the ramifications for their own career. And so, this is something that I trust that the city will take seriously and that Paul will take seriously. And so far, it looks like both are happening.
Sam, your thoughts?
I think Paul is going to take this seriously. His comments show that he's not trying to hide from his actions. And I think that's, frankly, what we've come to expect from Paul. He's done a very good job on the city council. He doesn't always vote the party line. I don't agree with him all the time, but he clearly tries to help his constituents as best he can. I would concur with Jeff. Let's give this time to play out. Let the facts be known before we rush to condemn someone like Paul Cunningham. And, I've heard a lot of Republicans saying, get him out of there right now. Republicans ought to realize that they don't get to pick his replacement. It's going to be picked by the Democrat majority. So let's calm this one down. Let's see what happened. It is a serious matter, but Paul deserves a chance to have the truth and his response to it be judged fairly and not in a rush.
Okay, we've got about 30 seconds left. So is this going to create problems for TRIO as well, the economic development agency that took folks on a trip there?
TRIO has a lot of problems, and this is only going to expand on them. They are incredibly costly for what they do when you compare them to other cities that of our size that have the same kind of program. And why isn't this something the mayor's office is doing? And let's stop funding TRIO and just move on.
About 10 seconds
It's
left
going to get
here.
put under a microscope on June 12th. It'll be the subject of a lengthy hearing in the city council, and we'll find out the particulars of what was spent, who spent it, and what it was spent on, and who paid for the drinks.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That's our show for tonight, but you can learn more about what's happening in politics by visiting azpm.org/yourvote. And while you're on our website, we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment. To find out the latest from AZPM, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at funding for the arts and other nonprofits. On Monday, Mayor Jonathan Rothschild stops by Arizona Illustrated to talk about his first 6 months in office. I'm Jim Nintzel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.